LeBron's got a case, right? Like, it's not like he doesn't have a case. He's got a case. It's a good case. It's a really good case. With his longevity, being great in year 22 is insane. That just doesn't make any sense. Being this good, the championships, the MVPs, all of that, but and the scoring record, all of that. It's a legitimate, real case. Kareem's got a real, legitimate case, right? With his history of winning, nobody's won more MVPs in the NBA than Kareem. He won 6 titles, 6 MVPs. He scored 38,000 points, a record that stood for almost 40 years with essentially one move. And that's what is amazing to me about Kareem. Is I know he had some putbacks and dunks and he made 1 3-pointer in his career, but basically, Rich, he had one move. And everybody knew what the move was and nobody could stop. So that, to me, that's an amazing case to make for greatness and affecting winning. The reason why I think Jordan's number one, in having seen all of these guys play, Michael Jordan's got the greatest will of any professional athlete I've ever seen. Never seen anybody who was as driven as he was, not to just win, but to dominate. He sent everybody home. Isaiah and the Pistons got him early, but after the Bulls broke through, nobody beat him ever. So didn't need a 7th game for an NBA final in an NBA Finals. Won all 6 titles in 6 games or less. Dominated at every level. Was a great defensive player earlier in his career. Was still a really good defensive player late in his career. And is the greatest scorer that I've ever seen. Could score from anywhere against anybody at any time. I just think the totality of his impact on the game, his impact socially, his impact globally, all of it just leads to the same conclusion. He's the best. He's the best ever. Bill Russell's got an argument. He's got 11 of them. Michael only had 6. So that's an argument, right? That's a legitimate argument. And Bill Russell's in our top 5, but he's not. Somebody's got to be one. We had to pick one, and it was Michael. Rich, I've said this all over the years many times. If Michael Jordan were 5'6" instead of 6'6", he'd be the greatest serial killer in the history of serial killers. Because he's an insane person. Oh my God! Wow. He's crazy. Like, he's crazy, and thank God he's tall. That's what I would say. Because he just, to your point, like, he didn't want to just beat you. He wanted to destroy you. He wanted you to be, and sometimes that's not a good thing. I get it. Like, I understand that, we're in a different era maybe than we were 30 years ago. But 30 years ago, that's what you had to do to be a champion. You couldn't win an NBA championship being a nice guy. Like, you couldn't. Larry Bird wasn't a nice guy. Magic wasn't a nice guy. Isaiah wasn't a nice guy. To beat those guys, you had to be ruthless, right? Like, that's an incredible gauntlet to have to run to win an NBA title. Those are all-timers. And Michael had to become that guy and became that guy to not only win, but then to dominate in a way that none of them dominated for that long, right? It was almost a decade of dominance. That to me is why I just think Jordan's will was unlike any that I've ever seen.
There are statistics every basketball fan knows by heart. Michael Jordan's 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, 5 regular season MVPs, 10 scoring titles, 9 all-defense selections, and 14 all-star appearances. Each of these alone could carve a player's legacy into stone. Yet, as veteran journalist David Aldridge once declared, none of those numbers explain why Jordan stands alone. What truly set him apart was not his skill, not even his accolades, but something invisible, something sharper than steel and stronger than muscle: his will. Jordan didn't step onto the court merely to win. He stepped on with the intent to dominate. Aldridge said he had never seen a professional athlete with a will as overwhelming as Jordan's. Winning wasn't enough. Jordan wanted his opponents to walk off the floor knowing they had never even stood a chance, suffocated under the weight of his relentless willpower. The turning point was when he finally conquered the Detroit Pistons, the bad boys, who had created the infamous Jordan rules to break him physically and mentally. They knocked him down, dragged him into the mud, and tried to turn every possession into a war. But instead of collapsing, Jordan rebuilt himself into steel. He came back stronger, crushed their dynasty, and from that moment forward, history was set. No one would ever defeat Michael Jordan again. And this is where comparisons with LeBron James come into play. LeBron is celebrated for the sheer length of his reign. 21 seasons at the highest level. 20 consecutive years averaging 25 points or more. That is greatness, defined by endurance. But endurance is not dominance. LeBron reached 10 NBA Finals and lost 6 of them. Jordan reached 6 and won all 6. LeBron had brilliant nights, but also entire final series where the opposition bent him out of shape. Jordan, on the other hand, never let it get that far. He never needed a game 7 inches, the finals. When the stage was brightest, he shut the door before his opponents could even breathe. That wasn't just winning. That was absolute authority. LeBron represents an era optimized by sports science, nutrition, and modern recovery methods, where players can stretch careers far beyond what once seemed possible. Jordan represents an era where opponents hit you, floored you, and dared you to get back up. And he didn't just survive, he dominated. That is the distinction Aldridge hammered home. LeBron is the symbol of longevity, but Jordan is the definition of indomitable will. There is a subtle but critical difference here. LeBron believes greatness is measured by the longest road, by sustaining excellence over decades. Jordan believed greatness only mattered if it was absolute. If, when you reached the summit, you never allowed yourself to be pushed off. 6 times Jordan reached the NBA Finals. 6 times he left with the trophy. That is the difference between a player who endures and a competitor who conquers. Jordan versus Kareem. The eternal skyhook versus the all-out storm. David Aldridge also pointed to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a titan with 6 championships, 6 MVPs, and nearly 40 years of dominance, anchored by a single, immortal move, the skyhook. Kareem's greatness was rooted in elegance and efficiency, one weapon honed so perfectly that no defender could touch it. For decades, that shot became both shield and sword, carrying him past 38,000 points and making him the league's all-time scoring leader for nearly 4 decades. But Jordan's dominance was of an entirely different order. He didn't rely on one weapon. He wielded an arsenal. Fadeaways from the post, pull-up jumpers off one dribble, acrobatic drives through double teams, mid-air improvisations that defied physics, dunks that crushed the will of giants under the rim. Jordan could score in any way, from any angle, against anyone. Aldridge described him as the greatest scorer he had ever seen, not because of volume alone, but because of inevitability. If Jordan wanted a bucket, he got one. The comparison reveals the heart of what made Jordan distinct. Kareem had a singular move that defined an era. Jordan was a storm, a full-force hurricane that shredded every scheme and every defender. Kareem's weapon was timeless, yes, but Jordan's unpredictability was terrifying. You could not prepare for him, because he was everything at once. Speed and power, finesse and brutality, artistry and ruthlessness. And here's the part that truly separates them. Defense. Kareem was a great shot blocker and rim protector. But Jordan was a two-way monster. Early in his career, he was the guard who smothered opponents into silence. Later, even as his athleticism waned, he was still locking down on the biggest stages. He won a Defensive Player of the Year award unheard of for a guard who also carried the scoring load. So, when Aldridge compares their cases, he acknowledges Kareem's statistical mountain, but he also recognizes the qualitative chasm. Kareem's skyhook was eternal. Jordan was eternal because he was everything. Kareem dominated through singular mastery. Jordan dominated through relentless versatility, fueled by willpower that demanded not just victory but devastation. That is why Aldridge crowned Jordan the ultimate scorer, not simply for his points, but for the inevitability and totality with which he imposed his will. Kareem's skyhook may stand forever as the most unstoppable single move, but Jordan himself was the most unstoppable storm the game has ever known. Jordan versus Russell. Championships versus era. Bill Russell's name inevitably surfaces in any GOAT conversation. 11 championships in 13 seasons, a mountain of rings so tall that it seems untouchable. Russell's legacy as the ultimate winner is secure. Yet, as David Aldridge emphasized, greatness is not only measured by the number of trophies, but also by the era in which those trophies were won and the opponents they were won against. Russell played in a league that was still finding its footing, with fewer teams, smaller rosters, and a less globalized talent pool. His Celtics were stacked with Hall of Famers, and the competition, while fierce for its time, did not have the depth and diversity that later generations would face. Russell's rings are monumental, but they came in an NBA that was not yet the furnace it would become in the 1,980 seconds and 1,990 seconds. Jordan's 6 championships came in an era defined by brutality and brilliance. To climb the mountain, he had to topple the Boston Celtics led by Larry Bird, the Los Angeles Lakers led by Magic Johnson, the Detroit Pistons led by Isaiah Thomas, and later the Utah Jazz with Karl Malone and John Stockton. These were not nice guys. These were assassins, Hall of Fame killers, who sought to break opponents physically and mentally. And Jordan didn't just survive them, he became the most ruthless among them. Russell was the greatest winner of his era. But Jordan's era was deeper, tougher, and more unforgiving. His 6 rings, though fewer in number, were forged in a crucible of resistance far hotter than anything Russell ever faced. And unlike Russell, Jordan was not just a defensive anchor or a team leader. He was both the apex scorer and a defensive nightmare, carrying his team on both ends of the floor. That is why Aldridge places Jordan above Russell in the GOAT hierarchy. Russell's dominance was real but contextual. Jordan's dominance was absolute, transcending context. His 6 rings were not just victories. They were statements, carved against the strongest competition the NBA had ever assembled. In the end, championships matter, but the era defines their weight. And Jordan's 6 weigh heavier than Russell's 11, because they were earned in the harshest, most competitive battlefield basketball has ever known. The scorer, the defender, the icon. When David Aldridge called Michael Jordan the greatest scorer he had ever seen, he wasn't speaking in hyperbole. He was speaking as someone who had witnessed Jordan dismantle defenses of every shape and size, in every situation, under every imaginable pressure. Jordan didn't just score, he scored with inevitability. If he wanted points, he got them. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. What made this even more extraordinary was that Jordan wasn't simply an offensive juggernaut. He was also a defensive nightmare. Early in his career, he hounded guards and wings with relentless energy, cutting off passing lanes, smothering scorers, and turning defense into fast break offense. He won a Defensive Player of the Year award in 1988, something almost unheard of for a player who also carried the heaviest offensive burden in the league. Even late in his career, when the athletic explosion of his youth had mellowed, Jordan was still an elite defender, shutting down opponents in crucial moments. This dual mastery to be both the best scorer and one of the fiercest defenders is what separates Jordan from nearly every other legend. Kareem had the skyhook, but not the perimeter defense. LeBron has versatility, but not the same flawless finals record. Russell had defense, but not the scoring dominance. Only Jordan combined both sides of the floor at an all-time level, year after year, and elevated his play even further in the biggest moments. And then there is his influence beyond the court. Jordan wasn't just a player, he was an icon. Air Jordan sneakers became a global phenomenon, redefining how athletes could transcend their sport. Space Jam turned him into a cultural superhero. His presence turned basketball from a national pastime into an international obsession. He didn't just dominate games, he dominated culture. That is why Aldridge and countless others hold Jordan above all. He wasn't just a scorer. He wasn't just a defender. He wasn't just a global icon. He was all of them at once, a player who embodied excellence in every dimension, on and off the court. When you watched Michael Jordan, you weren't just watching a basketball player. You were watching the living embodiment of inevitability. A man who could take over a game with his scoring, smother an opponent with his defense, and then step off the court and still shape the world. That combination, scorer, defender, and icon, is why Jordan's greatness isn't just remembered. It is revered. The ruthless era and Jordan's killer will. David Aldridge made it clear. Michael Jordan didn't dominate in a friendly league. He dominated in the most ruthless era basketball has ever known. The late 1,980 seconds and 1,990 seconds were not an age of nice guys. They were years filled with bruisers and killers, Hall of Fame legends who approached the game with cruelty, with a desire not just to win but to humiliate and destroy. To claim a throne in that climate, Jordan had to become just as ruthless. He faced Larry Bird's Celtics, who stacked the deck with veteran brilliance. He faced Magic Johnson's Showtime Lakers, a dynasty that seemed untouchable. He faced Isaiah Thomas and the Bad Boy Pistons, who turned basketball into a blood sport with the infamous Jordan rules. And later, he faced Karl Malone and John Stockton's Utah Jazz, one of the most disciplined duos the game has ever seen. Against each of them, Jordan did more than compete. He conquered. He became the very thing they feared most, a force of will that could not be broken. This was the essence of Aldridge's point that Jordan wasn't merely great because of his talent. He was great because he was willing to embrace the darkness of his era, to match the ruthlessness of his opponents and surpass it. He became the ultimate predator in a jungle full of predators. Aldridge put it bluntly, if Jordan had been 5'6" instead of 6'6", he might have been the greatest serial killer in history, because he was that crazy. Thank God he was tall enough to play basketball. It was a chilling but telling metaphor. Jordan's obsession with domination wasn't just a quirk, it was his entire identity. He wasn't satisfied with beating you. He wanted to leave no doubt, to leave you broken, to leave you knowing you had faced something beyond human. That killer will was what allowed him to go 6 for -6 inches the finals, never needing a Game 7, never giving his opponents hope. It was what fueled his unmatched competitiveness in practice, in games, even in trivial contests off the court. Jordan's greatness wasn't passive. It was active, consuming, and merciless. In the most ruthless era of basketball, Michael Jordan became the most ruthless of them all. And that is why, for Aldridge and for countless witnesses, his willpower more than any stat, more than any highlight, is what makes him the greatest to ever play. Conclusion: the perfect will and the GOAT. When the debates are stripped down, when numbers are parsed and accolades are counted, when eras are compared and narratives are spun, the question of the GOAT always returns to one truth. Michael Jordan's will was unmatched. LeBron James has longevity. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has the skyhook and a mountain of MVPs. Bill Russell has 11 championships. Each case is compelling. But what Aldridge emphasized and what history confirms is that none of them possessed the same relentless, almost maniacal will to dominate that Jordan carried within him. Jordan didn't just want to win. He wanted to crush. He didn't just want rings. He wanted inevitability. He didn't just want greatness. He wanted immortality, and he earned it. 6 finals, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, never once allowing a Game 7. The greatest scorer Aldridge ever saw. A two-way terror who could lock down the best and still drop 40 on their heads. A global icon who transcended basketball and became a cultural force. And above all, the man with the strongest will to compete that sports has ever witnessed. That is why, when all arguments are exhausted, when all the stats fade and records are broken, Michael Jordan still stands alone. Because greatness is not just about numbers. It is about the will that bends numbers, bends opponents, and bends history itself. Michael Jordan was, is, and always will be the GOAT. Not just because of what he achieved, but because of how he achieved it with a will so fierce that it turned every obstacle into fuel, every rival into a stepping stone, and every moment into proof that he was inevitable. Jordan is the standard. Jordan is the measure. Jordan is the GOAT.